The DNA test results arrived on a Tuesday morning, and with them, the most horrifying truth a wife could ever discover about her husband. I'd ordered the ancestry kit as a surprise for David's 50th birthday, thinking it would be fun to trace our family histories and maybe find some distant relatives. We'd been married for 18 years, had 2 beautiful children, and I thought I knew everything about the man I'd fallen in love with in college. I was wrong. The results showed that David and I shared 25% of our DNA, not the 0% that married couples should share, but 25%, the amount shared by half-siblings. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over, David Mitchell, half-brother, 99.9% confidence. My hand shook as I scrolled through the detailed breakdown. Same father, different mothers, born 6 months apart in the same small Ohio town where we'd both grown up, where we'd met in high school, where we'd fallen in love. If you've ever discovered that your entire life was built on a lie so devastating it could destroy everything you've ever believed about love, family, and identity, stay with me. Because what I found out about our family's conspiracy to hide this truth will make you question every relationship you've ever trusted. My name is Sarah. I'm 54 years old, and this is how I discovered that sometimes the greatest love story is actually the most forbidden one. Let me tell you about the 18 years I spent in what I thought was the perfect marriage, never knowing that our love was built on the darkest family secret imaginable. David and I met when we were 17, in our senior year of high school, in the small town of Millbrook, Ohio. He was the quarterback, I was the valedictorian, and we were the couple everyone said was meant to be. You two are like something out of a fairy tale, my best friend used to say. High school sweethearts who actually make it work. We did make it work. Through college at different universities, through the challenges of long-distance dating, through the struggles of starting our careers. David proposed the day after my college graduation, and we married a year later in the same church where both our families had worshiped for generations. Our wedding was the social event of the year in Millbrook. Both families had deep roots in the community. The Mitchells and the Johnsons had lived there for over a century. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone was thrilled to see 2 of their favorite families united. It's like a dynasty, David's mother had said during her wedding speech. 2 of Millbrook's finest families coming together. If only she'd known how literally true that was. David and I were perfect together in every way. We shared the same values, the same sense of humor, the same dreams for the future. We both wanted children, both valued family above everything else, both felt most at home in the small town where we'd grown up. You're so lucky, friends would tell me. You found your soulmate in high school and never had to go through all the dating drama the rest of us did. I felt lucky. David was kind, intelligent, hardworking, and devoted to our family. He was an incredible father to our children, Emma, now 16, and Jake, 14. He remembered anniversaries, brought me flowers for no reason, and still looked at me the way he had when we were teenagers. I love you more every year, he'd tell me on our anniversaries. I can't imagine my life without you. I felt the same way. After 18 years of marriage, I was still deeply in love with my husband. We had the kind of relationship that other couples envied. Genuine friendship, passionate love, shared goals, and unwavering commitment to each other. Our families were equally close. David's parents and my mother, my father had died when I was young, spent holidays together, vacationed together, and treated each other like blood relatives. We're not just in-laws, we're family. Again, more literally true than anyone realized. Our children adored both sets of grandparents. Emma had David's mother's artistic talents, while Jake had inherited what we thought was David's athletic ability. Family gatherings were warm, loving affairs, where 3 generations shared stories, traditions, and unconditional love. You have such a beautiful family, people would tell us. Your children are so lucky to have such strong family bonds. The irony of those comments would haunt me later. David and I had always been curious about our family histories. We knew our families had lived in Millbrook for generations, but the details were fuzzy.
My mother was somewhat secretive about my father's family, saying only that he died in a car accident when I was 2 and that his family had moved away afterward. David's family was more open about their history, but there were gaps there too. His father had been adopted, and they knew little about his biological family. It would be fun to trace our roots, I'd suggested several times over the years. Maybe we have some interesting ancestors. Maybe someday, when we have more time. That someday came on David's 50th birthday. I thought a DNA test would be the perfect gift, a way to explore our heritage and maybe connect with distant relatives. "This is so thoughtful," David said when he opened the kit. "I've always wondered about Dad's biological family." We did the test together, spitting into the tubes and mailing them off with excitement about what we might discover. Wouldn't it be funny if we found out we were related somehow, like distant cousins or something? He laughed. "In a town this small, we probably are related if you go back far enough." We had no idea how prophetic those words were. The family secret I discovered will haunt you forever. Sometimes the most devastating discoveries come in the most ordinary moments, and I was making coffee in my kitchen when the email arrived that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. "Your DNA results are ready," the email subject line announced cheerfully. I called David at work, excited to explore our ancestry together. "The results are in. Want to wait until you get home so we can look together?" "I'm stuck in meetings all day. Go ahead and check them out. I can't wait to hear what you find." I settled at my kitchen table with my laptop and coffee, expecting to discover interesting ethnic backgrounds and maybe some distant relatives. Instead, I found myself staring at information that made no sense. David's name appeared at the top of my close DNA matches list, showing a 25% genetic match with the designation half-brother. I stared at the screen, certain there had been some mistake. I refreshed the page, logged out and back in, even called the company's customer service line. "There must be an error," I told the representative. "This is showing my husband as my half-brother." "I understand this is confusing, but our DNA analysis is 99.9% accurate. A 25% match indicates you share one biological parent." "That's impossible. We grew up in the same town, but we're not related." "I'm sorry, but the science doesn't lie. You and David share a biological father." I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, trying to process what this meant. David and I had the same father. We were half-siblings who had fallen in love, married, and had children together. My children were the product of an incestuous relationship. The thought made me physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, my body rejecting this information as violently as my mind was. When I could finally think clearly, I started trying to piece together how this was possible. My father had supposedly died when I was 2. David's father, Robert Mitchell, was very much alive and had been a constant presence in our lives for 18 years. But according to the DNA results, Robert was my biological father too, which meant my mother had lied to me about my father's death, which meant David's parents had known the truth and allowed us to marry anyway, which meant our entire families had conspired to hide the fact that we were siblings. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, researching genetics and trying to understand the implications. What I learned was terrifying. Children born to half-siblings have a significantly increased risk of genetic disorders, birth defects, developmental delays, intellectual disabilities, all more likely when parents share a biological parent. Emma and Jake seemed healthy, but what about their future? What about their children? Had our families condemned future generations to genetic problems by allowing this marriage? I also learned that marriage between half-siblings was illegal in Ohio. Our marriage wasn't just morally questionable, it was legally invalid. When David came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with printouts of our DNA results spread in front of me. "How did the ancestry search go?" he asked, kissing me on the cheek like he had thousands of times before. The kiss that had always felt like coming home now felt like a violation. "David, we need to talk." He sat down across from me and I slid the DNA results toward him. "What am I looking at?" "Our DNA results. Look at the relationship designation." I watched his face as he read the words half-brother next to his name. The confusion, then shock, then horror as the implications sank in. "This has to be wrong," he whispered. I called the company. "It's not wrong. We share a biological father." "But your father died when you were little." "Apparently not. According to this, your father is my father too." David stared at the papers, his face going pale. This means we're half-siblings who have been married for 18 years and have 2 children together. This means our parents knew. That was the thought that kept circling in my mind. Our parents had to have known. In a town as small as Millbrook, where everyone knew everyone's business, there was no way this was an accident. "We need to talk to them," David said. "We need to figure out what this means for Emma and Jake first. Are they okay? Are there health risks? I don't know. We need to see a genetic counselor. We need to understand what we've done to our children." We sat in our kitchen, the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped our children with homework, where we planned our future together, and tried to comprehend that our entire life was built on a lie. What my own blood did to me will make you question everyone you trust.
Have you ever had to look your mother in the eye and ask if she knowingly let you marry your half-brother? That conversation would reveal a conspiracy so deep and calculated that it would make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. David and I spent 3 sleepless days researching genetics, consulting with doctors, and trying to understand the implications for our children before we confronted our families. The genetic counselor we consulted was Dr. Patricia Williams, who specialized in cases involving consanguinity, relationships between blood relatives. "I need to be direct with you," she said during our emergency appointment. "Children born to half-siblings have a 25% chance of inheriting recessive genetic disorders. That's significantly higher than the general population." "What does that mean for Emma and Jake?" I asked. "They appear healthy now, but we need comprehensive genetic testing to identify any potential issues. There could be problems that don't manifest until later in life." "And their children?" "The risks compound with each generation. Your children will need genetic counseling before having children of their own." David and I left that appointment feeling like we'd poisoned our children's future without even knowing it. That evening, we called an emergency family meeting. David's parents, Robert and Helen Mitchell, came to our house along with my mother, Patricia Johnson. "What's this about?" my mother asked as they settled in our living room. "You both sounded so serious on the phone." David and I sat across from them, the DNA results on the coffee table between us. "We did ancestry DNA tests," I began, "and we discovered something that we need you to explain." I slid the results toward them and watched their faces carefully. My mother went white. Helen Mitchell gasped and put her hand over her mouth. Robert Mitchell just stared at the papers with an expression I couldn't read. "How long have you known?" David asked quietly. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Robert spoke. "We've known since before your wedding." "You knew?" I stood up, my voice rising. "You knew we were half-siblings and you let us get married anyway?" "Sarah, please sit down," my mother said. "Let us explain." "Explain what?" "How you let your daughter marry her half-brother? How you've watched us have children together knowing they could have genetic problems?" Helen Mitchell was crying now. We hoped it would never come out." "You hoped?" David was on his feet now too. "You hoped no one would ever discover that you let siblings marry each other?" "You're not full siblings," Robert said defensively. "You only share one parent." "That doesn't make it legal. That doesn't make it right." My mother finally spoke up. "Sarah, your father didn't die when you were 2. Robert is your father. I had an affair with him when you were conceived." The words hit me like physical blows. "You lied to me about my father being dead?" "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From the truth? From the shame? From the complications?" What complications could be worse than letting me marry my half-brother? Robert cleared his throat. Sarah, when you and David started dating in high school, we thought it was just a teenage romance. We figured it would run its course. But when it got serious in college, we didn't know what to do. You could have told us the truth, David shouted. And destroy both your lives? My mother asked. You were so happy together, so perfect for each other. We are perfect for each other because we're related. By the time you got engaged, Robert continued, we'd kept the secret for so long that revealing it would have destroyed both families. So you decided to let us live a lie instead? We decided to let you be happy, my mother said. You love each other. You have a beautiful family. What difference does biology make? What difference does it make? I was screaming now. Our marriage is illegal. Our children could have genetic problems. We've been living in an incestuous relationship for 18 years. Don't use that word, Helen said sharply. What word? Incest? That's what this is. That's what you allowed to happen. David was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. How many people knew? Just us, Robert said. Don't lie to us anymore, I said. We deserve the truth. My mother sighed. Dr. Peterson knew. He delivered both of you. And Pastor Williams, who married you. We had to tell him because he asked about blood tests. The pastor knew and married us anyway? He said love was more important than biology. And Dr. Peterson? He said as long as you were happy and healthy, it wasn't his place to interfere. I sat back down, overwhelmed by the scope of the conspiracy. Multiple adults had known we were half-siblings and had chosen to stay silent while we built a life together. What about Emma and Jake? David asked. Are they healthy? Do they have health problems because of this? They seem fine, Helen said defensively. Seem fine isn't good enough, David shouted. We need to know what we've done to our children. You haven't done anything wrong, my mother said. You fell in love. That's not a crime. It literally is a crime, I said. Marriage between half-siblings is illegal in Ohio. No one has to know, Robert said quietly. We know. We have to live with this knowledge for the rest of our lives. What are you going to do? My mother asked fearfully. David and I looked at each other. We hadn't discussed this yet, but I could see in his eyes that he was thinking the same thing I was. We don't know, I said, but we can't pretend this conversation never happened. The DNA test results didn't just shock me. They destroyed everything I believed about family. Sometimes love isn't enough to overcome the truth, and the weeks following our family confrontation would test whether David and I could survive the knowledge that our perfect marriage was built on the most forbidden foundation imaginable. The first few days after learning the truth were surreal. David and I moved through our daily routines like sleepwalkers, trying to process the magnitude of what we discovered while maintaining normalcy for Emma and Jake. Are you guys okay? Emma asked at dinner 3 days after the confrontation. You've been acting weird. We're fine, sweetheart. But David's voice lacked conviction. Just dealing with some family stuff. What kind of family stuff? David and I exchanged glances. How do you tell your 16-year-old daughter that your parents are half-siblings? How do you explain that her entire existence is the result of an illegal relationship? Nothing you need to worry about, I said. Eat your vegetables. But Emma wasn't fooled. She knew something was seriously wrong. That night, after the kids went to bed, David and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding. I can't live like this anymore, I said as we sat in our bedroom. I can't pretend nothing has changed. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know how to be married to my half-brother. David was quiet for a long moment. The DNA doesn't change who we are, Sarah. We're still the same people who fell in love 20 years ago. Are we? Because I feel like I don't know anything anymore. I don't know who my father really is. I don't know if our children are healthy. I don't know if our marriage is even legal. Our marriage is real, regardless of what the law says. Is it? Because every time you touch me now, all I can think about is that we share a father.
That was the truth I'd been avoiding. Since learning about our biological relationship, I couldn't look at David the same way. The man I'd loved for 18 years suddenly felt like a stranger. Or worse, like family in a way that made our romantic relationship feel wrong. Sarah, you're letting biology override 18 years of love and commitment. Biology matters, David. It matters legally, it matters medically, and it matters morally. So, what are you suggesting? That we get divorced? That we destroy our family because of something we didn't know and couldn't control? I don't know what I'm suggesting. I just know that I can't pretend this doesn't change everything. We started sleeping in separate bedrooms that night. David moved into the guest room telling the kids that he was having back problems and needed a firmer mattress. The physical separation made the emotional distance even more apparent. We'd gone from being best friends and lovers to being awkward strangers sharing a house. "This is killing me," David said one morning as we drank coffee in silence. "I feel like I'm losing my wife and my best friend."
"You're not losing me. I need time to figure out how to process this." "How much time?" "I don't know." The uncertainty was torture for both of us. David wanted to move forward as if nothing had changed, while I felt like everything had changed. We were grieving the loss of our innocent love while trying to figure out what, if anything, could replace it. The situation became more complicated when we received the results of Emma and Jake's genetic testing. Dr. Williams called us into her office to discuss the findings. The good news is that neither Emma nor Jake show signs of major genetic disorders, she said. However, they are both carriers for several recessive conditions that could affect their children. "What kind of conditions?" I asked. "Cystic fibrosis, Tay-Sachs disease, and a few other serious genetic disorders. If they have children with someone who's also a carrier, there's a 25% chance their children could be affected." "So, our decision to have children together has potentially affected our grandchildren?" "It's increased the risks, yes. Emma and Jake will need extensive genetic counseling before having children of their own." David and I left that appointment feeling like we'd cursed future generations with our unknowing incest. "We have to tell them," I said as we drove home. "Tell them what?" "The truth. About us. About why they need genetic counseling." "Sarah, they're 16 and 14. How do we explain this?" "I don't know, but they have a right to know. Their future children's health depends on them understanding their genetic risks." "Can't we just tell them they need genetic counseling without explaining why?" "They're not stupid, David. They're going to ask questions." That evening, we sat Emma and Jake down for the most difficult conversation of our lives. "We need to tell you something about our family," I began. "Something we just discovered ourselves." "Are you getting divorced?" Emma asked immediately. We're figuring things out," David said. "But first, we need you to understand something about your genetics." I took a deep breath. "Your father and I recently learned that we share a biological father. We're half-siblings." The silence that followed was deafening. "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means we're related by blood," David said. "We didn't know this when we got married." "So you're brother and sister?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Half-brother and half-sister," I corrected. "That's why you've been acting weird. That's why Dad moved to the guest room." "We're trying to figure out what this means," David said. "What does it mean for us?" Jake asked. Are we okay?" "You're both healthy," I assured him, "but you'll need genetic counseling before you have children someday." Emma started crying. "So our whole family is a lie?" "Our love isn't a lie," David said firmly. "The circumstances are complicated, but our love for each other and for you is real." "But you can't stay married, can you?" Emma asked. "It's illegal." David and I looked at each other. We hadn't made any decisions yet, but Emma had cut right to the heart of the matter. "We don't know what we're going to do," I admitted. "You won't believe how far family members will go for money. Sometimes the law's black and white. even when love exists in shades of gray. And what we discovered about our legal situation would force us to make choices that would tear our family apart forever. 2 weeks after telling Emma and Jake the truth, I was sitting in the office of family law attorney Patricia Chen, trying to understand the legal implications of our situation. Ms. Mitchell, I need to be direct with you. Your marriage is legally void in the state of Ohio. Marriage between half-siblings is prohibited, regardless of whether you knew about the relationship when you married. What does that mean practically? It means that legally you were never married. Your marriage certificate is invalid. But we've been married for 18 years. We have children, property, shared assets. The children are legitimate, regardless of the marriage's validity. But as for property and assets, this becomes very complicated. Attorney Chen explained that because our marriage was legally void, we had no spousal rights to each other's property. Everything we'd built together over 18 years would have to be divided as if we were unmarried partners dissolving a business relationship. What about custody of the children? That's where it gets even more complicated because you were never legally married. David has no automatic parental rights to the children unless he's listed on their birth certificates. He is listed. He's their father. But if the state discovers the circumstances of their conception, there could be questions about whether the children should remain in your custody. My blood ran cold. Are you saying they could take our children away? It's possible. Children born of incestuous relationships are sometimes removed from the home, especially if there are concerns about the parent's judgment or the children's welfare. But we didn't know we were related. That may not matter to Child Protective Services. They might argue that the family environment is inherently unstable. I left that meeting feeling like our world was collapsing. Not only was our marriage invalid, but we could potentially lose custody of our children. That evening, I shared the attorney's warnings to David. They can't take Emma and Jake away from us. We're good parents. The kids are healthy and well-adjusted. But we're also half-siblings who have been living in an illegal relationship. That's not going to look good to social services. So what do? Attorney Chen says we have 3 options. We can quietly separate and hope no one ever discovers the truth. We can move to a state where our relationship might be legal, or we can fight the system and risk everything. What states allow marriage between half-siblings? None in the U.S. We'd have to move to another country. We can't uproot Emma and Jake from their entire lives. Then we separate. The word hung between us like a death sentence. Sarah, I can't imagine my life without you. I can't imagine mine without you either. But I also can't imagine living as your sister for the rest of my life. You're not my sister. You're my husband. Legally, you're neither. We were never married, and we can't be married. The next few weeks were a nightmare of legal consultations, family meetings, and agonizing decisions. David wanted to fight for our relationship, while I felt increasingly convinced that we needed to separate for everyone's protection. The breaking point came when Emma had a panic attack at school and had to be taken to the emergency room. She's been having anxiety about the family situation, the school counselor told us. She's worried about what people will think if they find out about your relationship. Has she told anyone? Not that I know of, but she's terrified that someone will discover the truth. That night, Emma came to me in tears. Mom, I can't stop thinking about what this means. Are Jake and I going to have problems? Are our kids going to be sick? Sweetheart, you're both healthy, and with genetic counseling, you can make informed decisions about your future. But what if people find out? What if everyone at school learns that my parents are brother and sister? Half brother and sister, I corrected automatically. It doesn't matter. It's still gross and illegal, and everyone will think we're freaks. Emma's breakdown forced me to face the reality that our situation wasn't just affecting David and me, it was traumatizing our children. The next morning, I made the decision that would change everything. David, we need to separate.
Sarah, please, we can work through this.
No, we can't. Look what this is doing to Emma. Look what it's doing to all of us.
So, you're just going to throw away 18 years? I'm trying to protect our children. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need my wife. I'm not your wife. I never was your wife. I'm your half-sister who happened to fall in love with you before we knew the truth. The truth doesn't change how I feel about you. It changes how I feel about everything. That was the moment David finally understood that our marriage was over. Not because we'd stopped loving each other, but because the foundation of our relationship had been revealed as fundamentally wrong. "Where will you go?" he asked. "I'm taking the kids to my sister's house in California. We need distance from this situation, and they need a chance to heal away from the gossip and judgment." "You're taking my children away from me?" "They're our children, and they need stability. You can visit. But David, we can't keep living as a family when we're not legally or morally able to be one. If you think blood is thicker than water, wait until you hear this. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from the person you love most. And leaving Ohio with Emma and Jake would prove to be the hardest and most necessary decision of my life. Packing up 18 years of shared life was like dismantling my own identity piece by piece. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every memento told the story of a love that had been beautiful and pure until we learned it was forbidden. "I can't believe we're really leaving," Emma said as she packed her bedroom. "This is the only home I've ever known." "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to start over to heal." "Are you and Dad ever going to get back together?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Right now we need to focus on helping you and Jake process everything that's happened." Jake was taking the move harder than Emma. At 14, he didn't fully understand the legal and moral implications of our situation, but he knew his family was being torn apart. "Why can't we just pretend we never found out?" he asked one evening as we sorted through his belongings. "We were happy before." "Because we can't unknow the truth, Jake. And the truth matters, even when it's painful." "But you and Dad still love each other." "Yes, we do. But sometimes love isn't enough." David was struggling with our decision to move. He'd taken a leave of absence from work and was seeing a therapist to help him process the situation. "I feel like I'm losing everything," he told me the night before we left. "My wife, my children, my identity as a husband and father." "You're not losing the children. You'll always be their father." "But I won't see them every day. I won't be part of their daily lives." "David, if we stay here, this secret will eventually come out. Emma is already having panic attacks about it. Do you want her to go through high school worrying that someone will discover our family secret?" "No, but I don't want her to go through high school without her father either." "You can visit. You can call every day. But they need space to heal, and so do we." The drive to California was the longest 2,000 miles of my life. Emma and Jake sat in the back seat, alternately crying and sleeping, while I tried to focus on the road ahead instead of everything I was leaving behind. My sister Lisa had offered us her guest house while we figured out our next steps. She'd been shocked when I called to explain our situation, but she'd immediately offered support. "I can't imagine what you're going through," she said. "But you and the kids are welcome here for as long as you need." Starting over in California at age 54 was terrifying. I had to find a new job, enroll the kids in new schools, and build a life from scratch while processing the trauma of learning that my marriage had been illegal. But it was also liberating. For the first time in months, I could breathe without worrying about who might discover our secret. Emma and Jake could start fresh without the weight of their family's forbidden history hanging over them. "It's weird not having Dad here," Jake said during our first week in California. "I know.
But maybe it's good for us to learn who we are as individuals, instead of just as a family unit. Do you miss him? Every day. Do you think you'll ever get back together? I don't know, sweetheart. Right now, I'm focused on helping you and Emma adjust to our new life. The kids started therapy with Dr. Maria Santos, a psychologist who specialized in family trauma. She helped them understand that their parent situation wasn't their fault and that they could have healthy relationships despite their complicated genetics. Your parents made the best decisions they could with the information they had. The fact that they were related doesn't diminish the love they shared or the love they have for you. I started therapy too, working through the complex emotions of loving someone I couldn't be with and grieving a marriage that never had been legally valid. You're mourning multiple losses, my therapist explained. The loss of your marriage, the loss of your identity as David's wife, the loss of the innocent love you shared, and the loss of the future you'd planned together. How do I move forward when I still love him? You learn to love him differently. You learn to honor what you shared while accepting that it can't continue. David visited every month, flying to California to spend time with Emma and Jake. The visits were awkward at first. We didn't know how to relate to each other as co-parents instead of spouses. "You look good," he said during his first visit. "California agrees with you." "Thank you." "How are you doing?" "Taking it one day at a time. Therapy is helping." "Good." "The kids miss you." "I miss them too." "I miss all of you." "David, I know, I'm not trying to make this harder. I just want you to know that my feelings haven't changed. Mine haven't either. But my understanding of what those feelings mean has changed. Over time, David and I developed a new relationship as co-parents and former partners. We talked regularly about the kids, shared decisions about their education and healthcare, and slowly learned to be friends instead of lovers. "You're handling this with such grace," Lisa told me one evening as we watched Emma and Jake do homework at her kitchen table. "I don't know how you're staying so strong." "I'm not strong, I'm just doing what I have to do to protect my children." "That's what makes you strong." 6 months after moving to California, I received a call that would change everything again. "Sarah, it's Dr. Williams. I have some news about Emma and Jake's genetic testing." "What kind of news?" "We've been monitoring their health markers, and I've discovered something important. The genetic risks we discussed may not be as significant as we initially thought." "What do you mean?" "Recent research suggests that the health risks for children of half-siblings are lower than previously believed, especially when the parents are healthy and there's no family history of genetic disorders." "So, Emma and Jake are going to be okay?" "They appear to be at no greater risk than the general population for most conditions. They'll still need genetic counseling before having children, but the outlook is much more positive than we initially thought." I hung up the phone feeling a mixture of relief and regret. Relief that my children's future was brighter than I'd feared, and regret that this information had come too late to save my marriage. The next part will show you that some family bonds are actually chains. 2 years after leaving Ohio, I was sitting in a California courtroom finalizing the legal dissolution of a marriage that never had been legally valid in the first place. And I realized that sometimes the end of one story is the beginning of another. The annulment proceedings were surreal. How do you legally end something that never was legally valid? But we needed the official documentation to close this chapter of our lives and move forward. The court recognizes that the marriage between Sarah Johnson and David Mitchell is hereby declared null and void due to consanguinity.
Custody of the minor children will be shared between the parents, with primary residence remaining with the mother in California. David had flown in for the hearing. We sat side by side in that courtroom, no longer husband and wife, but still bound together by our children and the love we'd shared. "How do you feel?" he asked as we left the courthouse. "I feel free," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. "Sad, but free." "I feel the same way." Over the 2 years since our separation, both David and I had done extensive therapy and personal work. We'd learned to separate our romantic love from our familial bond, and we'd developed a healthy co-parenting relationship. Emma and Jake had thrived in California. Emma was now a senior in high school, confident and well-adjusted.
Despite her complicated family history, Jake was a sophomore, excelling in both academics and sports. "I'm proud of how you've handled everything," Emma told me one evening as we prepared dinner together. "You could have fallen apart, but instead you made a new life for us." "We made a new life together," I corrected. "You and Jake have been incredibly strong through all of this. Do you ever regret leaving Dad?" "I regret the circumstances that made it necessary, but I don't regret protecting our family." "Do you think you'll ever fall in love again?" It was a question I'd been asking myself. At 56, starting over romantically felt daunting, but I was beginning to feel ready to open my heart again. "Maybe," I said. "Would that be okay with you?" "As long as you do a DNA test first," Emma said with a grin. Her ability to joke about our situation showed how much healing had taken place. David had also started dating someone, a woman named Jennifer, who knew about our complicated history and accepted it without judgment. "I'm happy for him," I told my therapist. "He deserves to find love again." "How does it feel to know he's moving on?" "Bittersweet. I want him to be happy, but it's also the final confirmation that our romantic relationship is truly over." "Are you ready to move on too?" "I think so." I'd actually met someone, Mark, a fellow teacher at the school where I'd found work. He was divorced with teenage children of his own, and he understood the complexities of blended families and second chances. "Your story is unusual," he'd said when I finally told him about my past, "but it doesn't change who you are now. Doesn't it bother you that I was married to my half-brother? You didn't know. You fell in love, built a family, and when you learned the truth, you made the difficult but right decision to separate. That shows character, not shame." Mark's acceptance helped me realize that I didn't have to carry the shame of my past forever. I'd made the best decisions I could with the information I had, and I'd protected my children when it mattered most. The kids liked Mark, which was important to me. They'd been through enough upheaval, and I wouldn't introduce anyone into our lives who didn't respect our family dynamic. "He's not trying to replace Dad," Jake observed after Mark had joined us for dinner several times. "He just wants to be part of our lives." "How do you feel about that?" "I like him, and I like seeing you happy again." David and I had also reached a place where we could be genuinely happy for each other's new relationships. When he brought Jennifer to Jake's baseball game, I was able to welcome her warmly. "Thank you for being so gracious," Jennifer told me. "I know the situation is complicated. David is a good man who deserves happiness. I'm glad he found you. He speaks about you with such respect. It's clear that despite everything, you two have maintained a beautiful friendship." She was right. David and I had managed to transform our romantic love into a deep, lasting friendship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to our children. "We're lucky," David told me after that baseball game. "Not many couples who go through what we went through manage to stay friends. We're not just any couple. We're family." It was true. Regardless of the romantic relationship that ended, David and I would always be family, not just because we shared children, but because we shared a father. We'd learned to embrace that familial bond while letting go of the romantic one. The most beautiful part of our healing journey was watching Emma and Jake develop into confident, well-adjusted young adults who understood their unique family history without being defined by it. "I'm writing my college essay about our family," Emma told me during her senior year. "Are you sure that's wise?" "I'm not going into all the details, but I want to write about resilience and how families can survive anything when they're built on love and honesty. What's your thesis?" "That sometimes the most difficult truths lead to the most important growth." She was right.
Learning that David and I were half-brothers was devastating, but it had also taught us about the difference between romantic love and familial love, about the importance of truth over comfort, and about the resilience of the human heart. What happened at our family reunion will terrify every parent watching. 5 years after discovering the truth that shattered our marriage, I'm standing in David's backyard in Ohio, watching our children graduate from high school together, and I'm amazed by how much beauty can grow from the deepest pain. Emma and Jake had both decided to finish high school in California, but they wanted David to be part of their graduation celebration, so we'd all come back to Ohio for a family reunion that could have been imaginable 5 years ago. "I can't believe we're all here together," Jake said as we gathered for a barbecue in the backyard where he'd learned to ride a bike, where Emma had practiced violin, where David and I had dreamed of growing old together. "It feels right," Emma added. "Different than before, but right." David and Jennifer were hosting the gathering, along with Mark and me. Our children from our new relationships were there too. Mark's daughter Katie, who was Emma's age, and Jennifer's son Michael, who was Jake's age. "This is the most complicated family reunion ever," Katie observed with teenage darkness. "But also the most loving," Michael added. They were right. What we'd created from the ashes of our forbidden marriage was something entirely new. A family built on choice rather than obligation, on love rather than law, on truth rather than secrets. David and I had both found happiness in our new relationships, but we'd also maintained the deep bond that came from shared history and shared children. "You know what's funny?" David said as we watched all the kids play volleyball together. "I love you differently now than I did when we were married, but I don't love you less." "I know exactly what you mean. The romantic love had to end, but the family love is stronger than ever." "Do you think we would have been happy if we'd never found out the truth?" "Probably, but we also would have lived our entire lives built on a lie. Our children would have lived with that lie. Their children would have inherited genetic risks we didn't understand. So you think it was better to know?" "I think the truth is always better than a beautiful lie, even when it destroys everything you thought you wanted." The graduation ceremony the next day was a celebration of more than just Emma and Jake's academic achievements. It was the celebration of their resilience, their ability to thrive despite learning that their family's foundation was more complicated than they'd ever imagined. "I want to thank my parents," Emma said during her valedictorian speech, "for teaching me that love comes in many forms, that families can be redefined, and that truth is always worth pursuing even when it's painful." Jake's speech was shorter but equally powerful. "My family taught me that sometimes the most difficult challenges lead to the most important growth. We're not a traditional family, but we're a real family, built on honesty and love." After the ceremony, our extended chosen family gathered for dinner at the restaurant where David and I had celebrated our engagement 20 years ago. "This is surreal," I told Mark as we sat at a table with my ex-husband and his girlfriend, our children, and the parents who had kept our secret for so long. "But good surreal. You all have created something beautiful from something that could have destroyed you." My mother, now 78 and dealing with early-stage dementia, had been struggling with guilt about her role in our situation. "I'm sorry," she said to me during dinner, as she had many times over the past 5 years. "I thought I was protecting you." "You were protecting me," I said, taking her hand. "You made the best decision you could with the information you had. We all did." Robert Mitchell, David's father, and my biological father, had also struggled with the aftermath of our discovery. He'd started therapy to deal with his guilt about the affair that had created the situation and the secret-keeping that had prolonged it. "I want you to know that I'm proud of the woman you've become," he said to me privately. "I'm proud of how you've handled this impossible situation."
Thank you. That means more than you know. I wish I could have been a real father to you. You were a real father to me. You were there for every important moment of my life, even if I didn't know you were my father. You walked me down the aisle. You held your grandchildren when they were born. You've been part of every family celebration. Biology doesn't make someone a father. Love does. The most meaningful moment of the weekend came when Emma and Jake asked to speak privately with David and me. "We want you to know," Emma began, "that we're grateful for everything that happened." "Grateful?" I asked, surprised. "Not grateful that you went through pain," Jake clarified, "but grateful that you chose truth over comfort. Grateful that you protected us. Grateful that you showed us what real love looks like. Real love? David asked. Real love is putting someone else's well-being above your own happiness, Emma explained. Real love is making difficult decisions to protect the people you care about. Real love is choosing to be family even when you can't be married. You could have stayed together and kept the secret, Jake added, but you chose to do what was right for us, even though it cost you everything. It didn't cost us everything, I said. It cost us our marriage, but it gave us something more valuable. A family built on truth. And it gave us an example of what healthy love looks like, Emma said. We know that real love doesn't require you to compromise your values or hide from the truth. As we prepared to return to our respective homes, David and Jennifer to their life in Ohio, Mark and me and the kids to our life in California, I reflected on the journey we'd all taken. 5 years ago, a DNA test had destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. It had ended my marriage, separated me from the man I loved, and forced me to rebuild my entire identity. But it had also freed me from a lie I didn't know I was living. It had protected my children from genetic risks they didn't understand. It had taught me the difference between romantic love and familial love. And it had shown me that families can be redefined, that love can take many forms, and that the truth really can set you free. Do you ever regret taking that DNA test? Mark asked as we flew back to California. Never, I said without hesitation. It was the most devastating and most liberating thing I've ever done. Even though it ended your marriage? It ended a marriage that was built on a lie. But it gave me a family that's built on truth. And it led me to you. As I watched Emma and Jake sleeping on the plane, I thought about the future they'd build with the knowledge of their complicated genetics and the example of their parents' resilience. They would make informed decisions about their own relationships and children. They would value truth over comfort. They would understand that love comes in many forms and that families can survive anything when they're built on honesty. Sometimes the most devastating truths become the foundation for the most beautiful lives. David and I thought we were losing everything when we discovered we were half siblings, but we were actually gaining the chance to build something real, something honest, something that could last forever. Not as husband and wife, but as family. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Have you struggled with the difference between romantic love and familial love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help another family navigate the complex terrain of truth, love, and family bonds.